Hey everybody, welcome to Bourbon Bites. My name is Clifton, and today I'm reviewing Cream of Kentucky Estate, a bottled and bond rye whiskey from Jim Rutledge. So you may be familiar with the name Cream of Kentucky. It's typically reserved for a line of sourced premium bourbons. So they've had like 13 year, I think like a 12 year. I have not had a chance to try any of the other Cream of Kentuckys, but when I saw this pop up at my local store, I had to pick up a bottle. So the funny thing is there's very little information out there about this bottle. Fred Minnick posted an article less than a week ago from the day I'm recording this to give us a little bit of insight into this bottle, but other than that, I know absolutely nothing about it. Like I said, this is a project by Jim Rutledge, who, if you don't know, was the master distiller for Four Roses. He has kind of earned legendary status into the world of whiskey. He's done a lot of different side projects under the name of J.W. Rutledge Distillery, most of which, like I said, Cream of Kentucky is the most famous, but they also did another rye whiskey, I think it was like a couple years ago, called High Plains Rye Whiskey, but that one was sourced and it was blended, and that was released at about $55. This one, however, is 100% estate grown. So this rye whiskey is a mash of 100% rye. It's distilled, aged, and bottled at Kentucky Artisan Distillery, which I had to look up. I've heard that name before, but it's the company that does Jefferson's. So they are based in Crestwood, Kentucky, but I think it's pretty cool that this rye whiskey is all 100% local to this estate. So this is a bottled and bond whiskey, so it's 100 proof. There's not an age statement on it. We can assume it's at least 4 years old. The article that I'm looking at says it's 6 years old, but there's nowhere on the bottle that actually says that. So I'm gonna assume it's probably between 4 to 6, but there's no age statement. And according to the bottle, this was limited to only 70 barrels. It says it is a tribute to Stephen Thompson of the Kentucky Artisan Distillery. It seems like he unfortunately passed, but he was a friend of, I assume, Jim Rutledge and the bourbon industry, so this was created in his honor. This was $70, by the way, so a little bit higher than the High Plains rye that I was talking about earlier. But this is 100% estate grown, so you would expect, instead of sourcing from like 5 different rye whiskeys, this is only one rye whiskey in this glass. So let's go and get it poured. Color-wise, I'm very impressed. For only 100 proof, this does have a lot of richness and color. It does have some nice legs on it. It is sticking to the glass. I have a feeling this is going to be a very rich whiskey just on looks alone. Let's go ahead and give it a nose. Okay, it's a bit unexpected as a rye whiskey. It's very grain forward. I've had a lot of really young craft rye whiskeys that have a similar nose. It's almost like actually going to the farm, smelling those grains being milled, a little bit of the dust in the air. I'm getting a little bit of that on this on the nose. Yeah, it's really interesting on the nose because it does smell pretty young, but again, we know it's at least 4 years old. So let's go ahead and give it a taste to see how it holds up. Cheers, guys. Whoa. Totally different than most other ryes I've ever had. It does reminiscent of something I've had before. Just like the nose, this is very grain forward. It's not like the spicy typical rye where you see from like some Indiana ryes or things like that. It's not necessarily screaming rye to me, it's just screaming grain to me. It almost reminds me, even though it's 100% rye, I'm getting a little bit of sweetness that I typically associate with like a corn whiskey, like a bourbon or something like that. But it's really interesting, so different from what I've had lately. And then once you get past that initial grain note, there is a honey sweetness there that's absolutely delicious. I love a honey note on any whiskey. That's one of my favorite notes. If I could ever find it on a whiskey, I'm here for it. This whiskey has that honey note, but it's a very like earthy honey. It's almost like honeycomb, a little bit of the grittiness and the graininess, like raw honey versus like a very processed honey. It's got a lot of that characteristic that really feels like the soil. I mean, we hear a lot about the term terroir, especially in like wine. Some Irish whiskeys have been focusing on that, but this one, maybe I'm a little bit influenced by the fact that this is estate grown, but I really do feel like you can get the taste of, the land, the raw, like actual rye grains they're using for this, which sometimes, could be seen as a bad thing. To me though, I think it makes it more interesting and it makes it a very unique rye whiskey, something I've never had before. Coming back to it after it's been sitting in the glass a bit, I am getting a little bit more depth to it. It's not necessarily all that young grain up front. It does have a nice body to it. Mouthfeel wise, I really feel like it does live up to the name Cream of Kentucky. It is thick, it is viscous, it is creamy, and it does complement that honey sweetness at the end. It's very desserty, but not in like an overly sweet kind of way. It's more of like a very decadent dessert. Price wise, $70 does seem a bit high. It does seem a bit like they are relying on the Cream of Kentucky name to kind of, boost up the price a little bit, this is a very solid rye whiskey. I'm a fan of it. I think it deserves a place in my collection. Plus, I mean, the bottle's pretty sexy. This looks very prestigious. So I think a lot of that, the Cream of Kentucky name and the bottle, is kind of driving up the price a bit. I think if it didn't have that, like I said, the High Plains Rye was about $55. I could see this being similarly priced if it didn't have the Cream of Kentucky name. So I think you're paying a little bit for the label as well. For that reason, I feel like, I don't think I would pay $70 for another bottle of it. It's my first Cream of Kentucky, so I assume that the bourbons that they're sourcing for this are a lot more premium, a lot more deserving of the price point. I do think this is a little bit overpriced. It's very, very good. I do enjoy it quite a bit. I just think $70 is a bit too much for what this rye whiskey is at this point. Now, I'd love to see this, with an age statement at some point, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old rye whiskey. Then, of course, you can, justify the 70 plus price point. But I do think I did feel like I overpaid a little bit for this now that I've tasted it. But I am curious to hear what you guys think. If you had a chance to try this, let me know. Like I said, there is no information on the internet at all about this bottle. Maybe if you stumbled across this video, it's because this is the only video at the moment that exists of this. But I am curious to hear what you guys think if you picked it up. If you think it's worth it, let me know in the comments below. But if you did enjoy this video and you found it informative, make sure to leave me a thumbs up. It really does help out the channel. And subscribe if you want to come back for more whiskey reviews. But until next time, this has been Bourbon Bites. Cheers, and I'll see you guys next video.